Welcome to this episode of Essays for Youth. I'm Stephen Tubbs with Bob McAdam. He is the author of the series that we've been reading for you, and today, Barking Dogs. Sometimes when one sets out to accomplish a goal, forces arise to work against actually meeting that goal. One such force is unjust criticism or discouragement from others. The great Albert Einstein was initially thought to be misguided in his thinking in scientific theory, but ignoring criticism, he persisted to prove his theory of relativity. Use of his theory has led to greater understanding to positions and movements of, say, heavenly bodies, as well as understanding and principles of light and heat. Because so many had failed before him, many people believe that the legendary Charles Lindbergh would fail in his effort to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. But he had a goal and a plan to reach that goal in spite of the skeptics around him. When on that May Day back in 1927, he landed in Paris, thus achieving his goal, he opened the door for transatlantic flight as we know it today. Perhaps you've seen a barking dog chase a moving car, attempting to stop it or change its direction. No matter how hard the dog barks, it can't stop the movement of the car. But if the driver of the car stops because the barking dog will likely bark all the more, well, you've got a big mess. And there's barking dogs and stopped cars everywhere. More importantly, though, the driver will be delayed or may never reach the destination. So dealing with unjust criticism can be like dealing with that barking dog. If unjust criticism is ignored, progress toward one's goal may not be impeded. And if ignored, criticism is likely to diminish or disappear. This is not to say that a just criticism, though, should be ignored. Learning an art of dealing with criticism may help each of us achieve our goals. Read into this for me and tell those viewing, what was the impetus for writing this one?
Oh, well, in my life, I've had lots of barking dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the analogy, at least, was a decent one for me.
Mm-hmm.
That, don't give up if you have a goal, unless you know you're absolutely wrong in pursuing that goal. But people will get in your way. They'll discredit you. They'll try to pull you down. Don't let them bark at you.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think just thinking of the incredible amount of years you've had to live life and to experience things. Of course, life is not perfect. Life is not always just obviously happy and great. You have to deal with criticism. But, you know, let's go back to Charles Lindbergh. You would have been, 7 years old, and you can remember that. Talk just a little of your memory.
Oh, well, of course, he was such a hero. And, of course, it was big news in those days. So, naturally, if you have any memory at all, with the big news that it was, you tend to remember it. And then when he landed there, the fuss that the French people made over his plane, you know, they pulled it apart, not quite, but
Mm-hmm.
they took pieces of it. They wanted part of history.
It was a celebration.
It was
Around the world, and for you watching, if you don't know the story of Charles Lindbergh and the Spirit of St. Louis, remember he did not have a crew. Who was flying with Charles Lindbergh?
a fly.
A fly. Yeah,
And
that's about it.
That was his friend.
Yeah, and that was it. And he did something to that point that nobody had done. You know, today it's so easy. I see it every day in my line of work as a radio talk show host, and everybody does. It's so easy to sit on the sidelines and then see what other people are doing, whether it's on Twitter or TikTok or Instagram. And it's so easy to just sit on the sidelines and just what I call like lobbing little bombs. Like it's so easy to criticize, but that shouldn't stop people, right?
Right. You got to have a little persistence and stick with it.
Here's a question along the same lines. How many times has it benefited you throughout your life to ignore the critics, to ignore and I call this personally, you have to really, you have to ignore the noise, because there's always going to be your detractors. There's always going to be those people on the sidelines that don't want to see you succeed. That should not stop you.
No. How many times? It's almost constant. I mean, I can't count the number of times that I've had people try to get in my way or say things that would discourage me, but
you just probably smile and move on.
Yep.
That's what you got to do.
Yep. Attitude makes a difference.
Yep. And sometimes, you can tune the barking dog out. Sometimes you have to address it. So,
Yep.
Good essay. This is Essays for Youth. Bob McAdam. I'm Stephen Tubbs, and thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.